Welcome to Breaking the Couch, a weekly conversation demystifying what happens in and behind the therapy scene to support your healing journey. We're your hosts.
I'm Dr. Dowdson, a licensed clinical professional counselor, a certified school psychologist, and a trauma specialist with Playfully Psyched.
And I'm Dr. Joharchi with Soft Art Psychology, a licensed clinical psychologist.
We're here aiming to provide you with mental health tools to address the cycle of generational trauma across the age span, from infancy and childhood to adulthood.
For more information, visit our Instagram page at Breaking the Couch or our website, breakingthecouch.com. While we hope you love listening to and learning from our podcast, it's not a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health professional.
Okay, and we are back, and we have a very, very, very special guest with us today, Mr. Darius Fennell. We are so excited to have him here. He is a mental health and recovery and therapy advocate, and so we think it's really special to have him because he has a book that's coming out, or that just came out, actually. Yeah. The book just launched. Oh my gosh. And, you know, all the listeners and people who are watching know that I am a little bit into social media and TikTok, and that's kind of how I connected with Mr. Fennell. And I'm just super excited to have this conversation, talking a little bit about anxiety and panic attacks and the journey for how we get to therapy and how it can be helpful or not, you know, and those mental health pieces. So, you know, we are here today. We have, of course, Dr. Joharchi and myself. I guess the first piece, right? So when I first saw you on TikTok, I think the very first piece I ever saw with you is the picture of you in the hospital bed.
Yes.
Yes. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Like, oh my gosh, what was that?
Oh gosh. Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me on. I've been watching, yourself on social media for a while, and therapists have a special place in my heart with all the, the insight and things that you all share and the things that you all, have gone through to, be able to practice what you do. Like, I looked at some of the credentials and I'm like, wow, that's that's a lot,
I have an alphabet soup. I know.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to that picture actually came from 2018. And so that was, I was just about to turn 40 years old, and it was in January during the winter months. And I was working on a work assignment that normally would take 2 to 3 weeks to do. And that day I was like, I'm going to just bust this thing out. I did it in 2 hours. So I was like, okay, well, normally this would take up a lot of time. Let me take a nap. And when I woke up, my heart rate was over 140 beats per minute. And I knew something wasn't right. I'm whatever should be stressing me out about work. Like, I just finished that. So, okay, this has to be something different. I'm not worried about anything else. Like, I was asleep. This thing woke me up. And I looked at my wife and I said, you have to take me to the hospital. Something is off. And I felt like I was in a dream world, and my heart rate would just not go down. So we're on our way to the hospital, and all these things were just going through my mind. Like, am I having a heart attack? Am I dying? Is there something else, wrong? Like, what are they going to find? Will my life be different if I even, make it back from here? I get there, and the first thing I tell them is, look, I'm having a hard time breathing. And so, with the medical triage, you normally get in right away. And I did. And they went in and did a chest x-ray and took some blood and some other stuff. And, we're not seeing anything. But I'm like, okay, something is not right. They were ready to send me home. I'm like, no, I'm not going home. I don't know what's going on, but something does not feel right. And I could not emphasize that enough. And so, like, okay, we'll watch you for a few hours, where a few hours turns into 5 days of just nonstop testing. And again, they came back and found nothing. 5 days. I'm sitting there, and you can imagine just sitting in a hospital room for that long, your mind goes to the craziest possible catastrophic outcomes.
Yeah.
5 days. Absolutely.
5 days. Yeah. So, and then it's kind of a catch-22, because I'm sort of frustrated that they haven't found anything. At least, okay, I can say it's this, and this is what we need to do next.
Right.
Not find anything. Oh, so very last day, give me like my last IV bag, and they said, oh, we think we just had a panic attack. So just follow up with your primary care physician, and basically good luck. What? I sat through 5 days to hear that.
Yeah.
And guess what? My symptoms did not go away. It was and in some aspects it got worse. My heart rate was still up. Let me see what else. The chest tightness is what scared me because I've never experienced that before.
Yeah.
It turns out some of that was due to GERD and acid reflux, and that can kind of mimic some things too. The dissociation was another aspect that I didn't care too much for because you feel like you're in a dream world. Either you don't feel real or the things around you don't feel real.
Yeah.
And that continued on for a very long time. So from there, I did follow up with my primary care physician as well as the cardiologist. My primary care physician had officially diagnosed me with generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder, fibromyalgia, and GERD. So those were the 4 official diagnoses that I had. Unofficially, agoraphobia because I did not want to leave the house because I was afraid of having a reoccurrence of a panic attack.
Yeah,
which is what turns out, what took me into the hospital. So,
which happens, right? I think that, I think one of the things that's really important for us to highlight is that 2 things happened. I heard 2 things. One, like, what? It's anxiety. Like, it's what? See a mental health doc? What? Right? It's like people are like, no, it's got to be something else. Right?
Exactly.
It's got to be something else. And then, exploring the piece of feeling like you're in this dream state.
Yes.
Right. Feeling like this can't feel real. And so many people, when they come back, they've had this huge panic attack, they'll say, well, like, we're looking for triggers. And a lot of them will say, well, I'm just afraid of having one again.
Yep.
Like
that's enough.
Can't get past anything. Like, I just don't want to have it. I don't want it to happen again.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yes. And we got to explore, like, what were some of the other triggers to that and what's the root of it.
Yeah.
Right. And so everyone knows I talk a lot about, trauma and kind of exploring those things.
Yes.
And so I'm going to share, I don't think I've ever shared this in our podcast, but my first ever, I've had 2 major panic attacks in my life. And my first ever one, I had no idea what was happening. This is before I was working in retail. It was before my mental health stuff. Right. And I was at a horrible job, a toxic job. It was horrible. And it was so much stress and pressure. I was a general manager at a big box retail store. And I was like driving to work, already crying, and I knew I didn't want to have to go to work. I had to go, but I'm like literally driving, like trying not to crash. I'm driving to work. I got to go and it's going to be fine, or whatever. Get myself calm. And then I reach for the door handle to get out of the car. And I can't move. I can't move. And it feels like the world slowed down and started going in super slow motion, but I couldn't move. And then I start hyperventilating and my heart is beating so fast. And I'm like, I'm terrified. Like, what is happening? Like, I don't know what's happening. I'm like stuck. And so I'm just in this position for, I don't know, felt like an eternity. And it finally like slowed down, calmed down. And I'm like trying to get myself together. Maybe 20 minutes passed. Because at this point, I'm like super late. I'm like, well, just whatever. Calm down. And then reach for it again. I'm like trapped in the car at this point. I reach for the door handle again. I cannot get out of the car. Wow. I can't get out. Wow. Now I later learned that was a panic attack. That was the way I was manifesting a panic attack. I ended up quitting that job, I think, within a week after that. But just how paralyzing it can be, right?
Yeah.
And it's terrifying because you just don't know what's going on, especially if you've never had these conversations before.
Right.
I mean, I knew I wanted to be a psychologist. I had like undergrad degree in this, but I didn't have my like PhD or any mental, didn't know that's, and then it's like a different piece of like, even if I had read about it, experiencing that piece was major.
Yeah.
Right? And so I like people to hear these stories. Right.
Yeah.
And yet we talk about your mental health and your physical health are directly related. They are not separated.
Yes.
They're not this whole different categories, right?
Yes.
Often what's happening in your mental health is showing up in your body.
Absolutely.
Right? And we don't pay attention, or we think, oh, it's just I need a little bit more sleep, or I need, little things. And then sometimes something like a panic attack is like the whammy. Like, listen, you didn't listen to any of the signals.
Yeah. The bill comes due. The bill absolutely comes due. And for me, I use the analogy of, well, your check engine light was on and you kept ignoring it. I saw signs.
That's a perfect analogy.
I saw plenty of signs. I'm like, I'm smart. The thing is, like, I've had anxiety like all my life. Like one of my nicknames growing up was Doomsayer, right? Because we would encounter things. I would always kind of talk about like the worst case. I'm like, well, what if that happened? You know, like, here you go again, Doomsayer. But that was like the mindset that I, you know, had at a very like young age, and you know, feeling nervous and anxious, really like all the time, just became normal. So feeling like an uneasy state, like I never really made a huge deal about that because I just thought, well, that's just normal for me.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, you power through it or you get through it and then, you know, or circumstances change and then you go on to something else. But this did not, the difference between this and stuff I had in the past was this was not relenting. Like the symptoms I described, you know, the fast heart rate and the tight chest and all that stuff, this persisted for months.
Yeah.
You know, and when you mentioned about, you know, it's got to be something else. Like my key point was to bug my cardiologist. I'm like, okay, it's something wrong with my heart, right? So I'm telling him all my symptoms, blah, 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 blah. He puts this little square piece like heart monitor that sticks to your chest for about 7 to 10 days. So they're collecting, you know, data for a very long time. I'm like, all right, this has to be it. It's going to catch this irregularity, and this is the route we're going to go, and we're just going to fix everything, right? Mail it in, had my appointment. He said, other than it, you know, your rate just being kind of elevated, he's like, this is the column here where abnormalities would show up. You don't have anything. And so I'm like, what do I do now?
But that's what it feels like. It feels like you're about to die. It feels like your heart is jumping out of your chest, and we want people to go to the doctor. And then the doctor just tells us you're nervous, or this is fill in the blank. I really appreciate you for telling us about your journey so far, you know, and sharing this, because that transparency has had Dr. Doughton sharing some of her experience, which I appreciate you for. And I'll say for me, I confuse my OCD with physical stuff. And of course, OCD isn't like panic or anxiety, but it feels
it's in the family. Yeah.
It's in the family. Thank you. Yeah. So it feels that same disassociation where sometimes where the OCD goes up, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with my heart. Same thing. And it's like, okay, I'm real, doing all the things, you know, with ice and different things to get here and now, but it's a whole thing. So I totally hear you.
Got to re-regulate the nervous system. I think what's so interesting when we say like, you know, it's just anxiety or it's you're nervous, that pulls in that stigma. So, right?
Absolutely.
That like, well, it has to be something more serious. Has to be my heart. It's got to be an irregular heartbeat, right? Because that's a serious thing, and that's a bit mental health. Like, you know.
Well, and so this is where, you know, enter therapy. And so what's funny is I had folks in my life who were telling me I needed to go, and this was years before 2018. I'm like, I'm not going to no therapist. You know, like what are some of the associate stigmas with that is that, you know, you're crazy or you're weak as a man. Like you're weak and you got to go talk to somebody about
as a black man.
Yeah.
Come on.
And
going to a therapist.
Yeah. Culturally, I mean, stuff I've heard, you know, even comments in my own family about, you know, therapy and stuff like that. I was like, all right, I guess I need to quote unquote, you know, man up. Just grind it out. Right. But again, once that bill comes due, you know, and you hit that crisis state, there are a lot of things that you'll start to make at least for me, a lot of things I made consideration for that I refused to before. It was like, no, I consider those now because this thing is, I mean, from the moment I would wake up, right? Blast of adrenaline, fast heart rate. I haven't even got out of bed yet. I haven't used the bathroom, brushed my teeth, I haven't done anything.
It's the worst.
But yet, you know, it's the equivalent of a lion sitting there looking at me, telling me, I'm about to eat you right now. I'm about to eat you up. Tear you apart and I'm gonna eat you alive. And but there's no lying, but that's how my body's reacting. And I'm like, how in the world do I stop this? That's the thing. Like, even when I went to therapy, I went in there with an agenda. You're going to fix me, tell me everything I need to do. Okay, it's gonna be at my pace.
Oh, okay. You were really
No,
trying.
no, I didn't say those things, but
Right.
that was my internal motivation initially.
Yeah.
Because, when you're just trying to get rid of something, like, and you don't know what you're dealing with and what it really takes to recover, you kind of just, going off of survival instincts, right? And that was mine, and the lady who was my therapist, sweet, they kind of reminded me of my mother, very gentle spirit, just took her sweet time with me, and that's exactly what I needed. At first, I'm just like, come on, man, give me a book. I need a checklist, boom, 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 boom. We're going to do all this stuff and I'm going to be, back in the game.
Yeah.
And then one day in therapy, she asked me, if you could really get that old person back, would you really want to get them?
Wow.
And at first I was like, heck yeah. Why do you think I'm here? And then I thought about it, I was like, you know what? The things that led up to me getting here, I don't think I want to do that again.
Exactly.
But the illusion was, I felt like I was so, free. I could do anything that I wanted. And when your quality of life changes and you feel like you recognize the thing that you've lost, that's the aspect of the old person that you think you want back. Like the ability to go to a grocery store and not feel like you're going to faint. The ability to drive on a, 3-4 hour trip with your family and not feel like, you want to jump out of the car while it's still rolling because your body's just like vibrating. I wanted my freedom, but I didn't know what freedom really looked like until I had been walked through the process of, hey, this is multifaceted. There's no one thing that okay, if we just tweak this, then it doesn't work that way. It's a multifaceted thing, from everything from how well you sleep, your hydration, your diet, your past trauma, a bunch of things that, you will discover, hopefully if you go and see a therapist. And that's, kind of giving a plug for the book. Like that's kind of the whole reason why I wrote that, is to, number one, put a face to anxiety and mental health, especially as a male and a Black male, to say, yes, I go to therapy. I'm not ashamed of it. I know the result of what happens when you don't. And this whole lie around the grind culture and feeling like, oh, I'll just overpower this thing. Yeah, when you're in your 20s, 30s, you might get away with it, but there's a point where the bill comes due and what are you going to do now? Now there's no quick recovery, and you don't have the skills nor the willpower to overcome this uncharted territory, or a place I call Jupiter, but you don't know how to leave. And that's kind of what inspired the title. Like, what would it be like if I actually had to leave Jupiter, right? The gravity is almost 2.5 times the Earth. The wind there is made up of like mostly helium and hydrogen, I think. And like the windstorms are like incredible, right? And then there's no real like solid surface that you can walk on. Like that's a lot how anxiety feels, right? I don't really feel like I ever have a solid footing on the ground. There's the physical aspects of feeling like I can't breathe. And then the weight of everything that you're dealing with and not knowing what to do, like how do I ever get out of here? And so, my first and foremost thing that I talk about is go see your primary care physician. Like that was the one correct thing that the hospital did tell me to do, right? So I did go, and I had additional tests run there, right? Everything looking at my thyroid, to hormones, to blood sugar, everything under the sun. That would be that. Number one, you got a baseline for, right? You can rule that out, and if that comes back okay, then you don't really have to worry about anymore. At least for this time period, right? So, and my doctor did have a little bit of background in mental health, so there were some things that there was some medicine recommendations that I didn't necessarily go with. I talked with some. Well, here's the thing, like, and here's one of the other things that going to having an online community of folks who are transparent and say, yeah, I've taken these particular, medicines, and here's kind of what I experienced, and here's a success. Now we know that every medicine is going to have a unique response for each person, right? And ultimately, that conversation is between you and your primary care physician. Like nobody can decide that for you, right?
Exactly.
They're the only ones that can practice medicine. The same way, therapist is the only one who's licensed to practice, therapy because they're sanctioned by the state, or however those rules go, right? So just putting that disclaimer out there as well.
Thank you.
But one of the things that actually I found or learned from one of my other primary care doctors was the introduction to meditation. And now, again, my background coming from Christian and just anything that was related to something that looked mystical or other than, the Bible is like, you don't touch that stuff, man. Like that's the devil. And, it's, or even the aspect of medicine, or therapy or any other type of philosophy that was kind of outside of the Bible. Like sometimes those things you could hear from the pulpit where those things were discouraged. You just need more faith, which I may end up writing a book addressing that.
Yeah.
Because one of my shirts that I have, I don't have it on now, but the one that's on I think it's on TikTok. I think I have the book on there, but prior to that, it says his mercy, his grace, and therapy. So you can have
like that.
all of those, right? I mean, whatever your religious background or beliefs are, you can. There's
it doesn't have to be either or. Yeah.
Right. There's space for many different things. And as I mentioned earlier, it's, the recovery is not a single thing. It's multifaceted. Now, my knee-jerk reaction was to pray and do all the extreme stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to just pray this thing away and it'll be gone.
Oh, not pray it away. Yeah.
It didn't happen.
Yeah.
So then, okay, what do you do now? And again, this is where, therapy came in and being walked through the process. And it uncovered a lot about how I looked at myself, because I recognized that I did not regard myself as human. I regard myself as a machine. And so if something happens to your washing machine, you're not like, oh, okay, you're not washing the clothes correctly. Come sit down and talk. And no, you're like, okay,
take this apart or get it fixed or
replace this part and start working again. Or you think of a car coming to a pit stop, zip, 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 change the wheels, put fuel in, and you're back there on the racetrack, right? And that's how I regarded myself. But life is seasonal, and there's some times where you may need to sit down for a little while.
Yeah.
And I never regarded myself that way and never did those things. It was always one thing to the next. And when I sat down with my therapist and she talked about what are some major life-changing things that have happened to you, and actually hearing feedback from that, I was like, I never processed any of that.
Yep.
The move we did as a family, having a child, losing a child, 2 layoffs, it's like, that's a lot.
That's a lot. Even one of those things can completely dysregulate someone's nervous system, and you listed off several.
Yeah. And my response to everything else, like in the past, was push the clutch in, find the next gear, man, and let's go.
Yeah.
And it worked until it didn't. And then it's like, well, now what?
Because it builds up.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, how long can you go without an oil change? A long time.
Yeah.
But your car won't be happy, right? Eventually.
Right.
Eventually. And you get out.
And you brought up the thing of dysregulation, and like I just kind of discovered like that term, I think in 2019. Yeah. So I went a good probably year and a half where like the cognitive behavioral therapy was a major tool that was used in therapy. And yes, like I'm back in therapy now, and we're using aspects of that, which are very helpful in terms of reframing thoughts, right? But it does not address the part where your body is reacting. Yeah. So in and of itself, like I've kind of heard certain people say, oh, well, it doesn't work at all. I'm like, no, there's a place for that. There's a place for it. But again, going back to the multifaceted thing, it's one piece of what I call the toolkit or the toolbox. In my book is how do you put something that's customized and unique to you that you can refer to for many different things. Sometimes, like one of the things I discovered was like riding a bike. The aspect of play, right?
Yeah.
That was one of the things I didn't realize. I haven't done it since I was a kid. But 2019, I got a nice little road bike, and I did a couple of charity races. And the thing was, there was something about going down the hill and feeling the wind hit your face where I did not have a care in the world.
Little Darius was playing. Like he came out to play. I love that. Like, oh my gosh. You know?
So, oh man, that was one of the major things. That was a very successful tool, along with therapy. The other thing that I kind of address in the book is that what I call non-negotiable is having a journal. You absolutely have to have something where you can write down a lot of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number one,
Mm-hmm.
what you're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you'll go to your doctor or a therapist and, okay, you'll get the question, what brings you in today, or how are things going?
Mm-hmm.
And unless you have photographic memory, which I do not have,
Right.
I won't remember everything to say. And then next thing you know, the session goes by and you're like, oh,
Exactly.
I meant to bring up such and such. But now
Mm-hmm.
you know, I came with bullet points, you know,
I
and it
love
wasn't
that.
to dominate the conversation, but like, these are key points that I want to talk about and get
Mm-hmm.
feedback on and get another perspective. Right. Or if you're going to the doctor, here's some symptoms that I experienced.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do about that? Right. And so it's a partnership with these different
Yes.
professionals where you're advocating for yourself. You're getting professional feedback, and then you're making the best decision for yourself in terms of the path you need to take, and then being honest about how those things are going. But you need a way to track your progress. There's no way you
Absolutely.
can have really measured change without tracking what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
I love that. I love, one of the things that I do in therapy with some of my patients is I will, in our first session or two, I'll say there'll be times where, sure, I have an idea of things I want to check in on, or areas I want us to go in or something like that. But I'm almost always going to start the session is, so what would you like us to talk about today? Or what needs do you have that we need to make sure we address today? Because my agenda is never going to be important as what you have going on. Yeah. And so I start every session like that. And so then I start to see a lot of people will be like, let me see what I wrote down in my journal. Let me see what I wrote down for us for an agenda. Right. Yes. And I love that because it's starting to get them to see that, one, it is a collaborative relationship. Yes, I have information and ways that I can help and support, but I need you to know what you want help and support with. I need you to know what's working, what's not working, and I check in about that. And so I love that you're like from your end, right? You're the patient end to say, no, this is helpful, and write this down and journal it. And I love that.
Yeah. And I mean, there were times where I came back to both, therapist and doctor and said, number one, one of the medications, I'm like, and we ended up having to do some blood work, and it was affected me in a bad way. So he's like, okay, we're going to discontinue this. Right. I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't tracked things over time and followed up with him and said, okay, here's what's happening. And so took that off. And eventually that was one of the things that got me off of all my medications was explaining what my progress was, or the opposite, right? Sometimes you have to kind of, make adjustments in any regard, but it helps you to be adaptive, and it helps, you also to see not just what's going wrong, but here's one instance where I think I had like a bad week or bad 2 weeks or something. I came to my therapist and I was like, something. And she's like, but do you remember when you first came in here, you hadn't even done X, Y, and Z? And, okay, you had a bad week, but look where you are now compared to before. And I went back in my journal. I was like, wow. Yeah. So your emotions can sometimes play tricks on you and make you feel like, oh, you got to start over. It's like, no, it's had a bad week. So what? That was the other aspect of learning how much self-compassion I did not have for myself. As a matter of fact, the whole notion of that actually infuriated me initially. What do you mean? I don't want to hear that, because that was my inner voice and how I dealt with everything. And that actually even came up in one of my other more recent sessions, was looking at circumstances more realistically.
Yeah.
And what does your best look like today? Not where you ideally think you're supposed to be hypothetically, but say you didn't get a good night's rest. What is that going to mean the next day? Requires a little bit of compassion to say, hey, you know what? You're not going to be on all cylinders today, and that's okay. It's all right. But it also linked into this whole notion of externalizing my wealth, not my wealth, externalizing my worth based on performance. And when you're so used to achieving all the time and being able to do things on call, and now your body's not allowing you to do it, now you're getting to really see who you really are and what really is driving the things that you do. And having someone professionally point that out to you in a gentle way, but now, okay, here's some other options that you can do to think differently.
I love that, right? Because you talked about you saw yourself as a machine, right?
Yep.
For me, there have been times in my life where I saw myself as superhuman, right? And I remember I had a boss one time call me. I made like a silly mistake. Like it was, I don't know, I had like, I remember what it was. I showed up to work with 2 different pairs of shoes on. They were the same style of shoe,
Okay.
but they were different colors, and so I didn't notice, right? But I worked with young children at the time, and the children noticed, and they were like, "What?" And I was like, "This is not on purpose at all, right?" And my boss thought it was hilarious because she's like, "You're always so put together," and like
that was my first thought. Yeah, I was like, I know you
always
always have everything looking really pretty and matching, like really nice. I'm like, you 2 different shoes?
Yeah,
that was my thought.
And I know, like 3 and 4 year olds were like, "Oh, you have on different shoes," and I was like, I had no idea. They pointed out, and then she thought it was. She like laughed and like she thought it was so hilarious. She was like, "No, because if you can make that kind of mistake," she's like, "it makes me feel like you're human." She's like, "I've always looked at you as Superwoman. Like you don't make mistakes. You work 50,000 jobs. You don't complain. You just go, go, go." And like I look up to that. But at the same time, she was like, "Oh, but you can put on different, like you can accidentally screw up your shoes." Like, okay. And so I, looked at myself as like, there weren't other options. Right. It wasn't that I'm like, it was just, you just have to go. You just have to. I didn't know that there are other choices. But then, there's that burnout period. You hit that wall and then you beat yourself up because you can't stop. You can't, you're superhuman. Right. And so compassion, building that in, right?
Oh gosh.
You are deserving of compassion. You are worthy because you exist.
Yes.
You have inherent value, and learning that, oh my gosh, that changes your life.
Yeah, that was rough. That was a rough revelation. And that is spot on. Because you exist, you have worth and value. But for me, because both my parents taught in the school systems, where I grew up. And so, we couldn't get away with a lot. I'm the youngest of 3 boys. We couldn't get away with a lot. And so, I internalized a lot of stuff. It was never said, if you don't get an A, you're gonna, but that's the way I internalized it, all the way through undergrad. Once I got to grad school, it was just a matter of I got to survive this thing, I did grad school while I was working full time, and you can't compete with those, younger folks that are, they have time. You don't have time, at the time, I think, we just had 2 kids who were very young, in the very dependent state. And so you don't get a break from those just because you're in school. You get a break from your job just because, you have those things come. You have to prioritize, right? But there are also things that are pulling on you while you're doing other things. The day I defended my thesis, my wife had to take my middle son to the hospital, and so that was a crazy morning, because I'm like, well, do I cancel? Do I go in? How do I? I ended up getting through it. But again, it was one of those things where you are so patterned to be in this survival mode that even if there are other options, they're not even regarded. Because you feel like, if I don't do this, I'm not going to survive. If I fail, all fails. And so, I don't even have the mindset of me breaking.
Exactly. You don't entertain it. You can't even.
I'm not thinking about that.
No, not like, it just doesn't even exist. It's hard to explain. It's been there. Like, you just don't. It just isn't even an option.
Well, and that was a scary part, where I was like, I'm not invincible. And that's kind of the deception of our youth. Because in my 20s, anybody can get hurt, but it's like, I'll always bounce back from this. You break your leg, I'll put it in a cast, or something happens and you'll need like a little bit of recovery time. That's expected, but no, I'll be back in full force. And this time it was like, I may be like this forever. And so there were very dark nights of the soul that felt very hopeless and helpless. Again, that was one of my other motivations for writing the book, was if I could speak to that person that you saw sitting in the hospital, what would I say to him? And there are many others who are like him that feel stuck. Right. And don't know, what do I do next? I don't know what to do. And I don't want to feel like this. But your willpower and your desires, when it comes to dysregulated nervous system doesn't matter.
Nope.
You know, and one of the chapters I talk about like the mind and body connection, where I get into polyvagal theory. I'll say polyvagal theory. Talking about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems and what types of things can kind of, you know, stimulate one versus the other, and the whole concept around neuroplasticity, where you're the things that you encounter kind of rewrite the pathways in your brain. And so for me, it was constant stress, constant adrenaline rush, constant, you know, craziness going on at work, and or something happened in, you know, at home with the kids, or just, it was a constant just kind of battle fight. And my body basically said, okay, thank you for the software upgrade. We have the next round of updates we're going to implement, which you told us through your experience that you're always going to stay at level 100. We got you.
Yeah.
And play. And, okay, there we go.
Yeah.
You know, and until you learn how to rewrite that code, whatever's written is what's going to get run.
Yep.
And it took me a good year and a half there was a lady out of Australia named Jessica McGuire, who has a very good training on just toning your vagus nerve. Nice. And one of my biggest tools, probably I wouldn't call it my favorite, but I'd say the most effective one that I felt physically in my body, even though at first it's hard, is cold showers. Oh yeah. Now, the first time that I did it,
it's the same like dunking your face in cold water. That's the like it's a go-to for me. Yeah.
I turned it down a little too fast the first time, because I'm like, I'm gonna take it on, you know, and my body's like,
it's still shocking you. Like, not a good shock at that point.
I grabbed like the top part of the shower. It's like, am I going out? Like, oh no. So, the next few times I would turn it really slow and let my body like acclimate. Here's some other things that I learned to do. There are 3 things I learned to do while in that cold, uncomfortable presence, right? I could say 4 things. The first thing is, in my mind, align myself to understand that being uncomfortable is not necessarily dangerous. Yep. Sometimes it might be, but again, you've done all these thousands of tests that ruled out a bunch of different things, even rare stuff. So you know that's not you. I'm speaking to myself, like, you know that's not you. So, okay, you're uncomfortable. How do I learn how to sit in this uncomfortability? And number 1, how do I control the things that are coming out of my mouth? What types of things am I going to say while I'm uncomfortable, right? How do I unclench my fists and untense my body while it's uncomfortable? And then how do I control my breathing? Yep. Those things collectively allowed me to encounter real world anxiety, but using those same tools that I did in the shower over and over again, boosted my confidence, rewrote the code in my brain that says, okay, what do we do when we're uncomfortable? It's going to play the tape of what you were doing in the cold circumstances of that cold shower, and it's going to play that tape back. Well, what things were I saying in the shower? That I'm safe, I'm worthy, I'm loved, I can do hard things. So guess what? When that happens in real life, guess what the tape's playing back?
Safe, I'm worthy, I can do hard things.
My body, how to slow the breathing down. So either now it's uncomfortable, I'm not doing the shallow breathing, I slow down the breathing. Why? Because that's what I did repetitively. And so the neuroplasticity took my power back, took my confidence back, and learned how to encounter those things where I almost would try to self-induce them. You know, if driving was causing me anxiety, well, guess what? We're going to get on the turnpike and let's see what happens. And I don't recommend this to anybody, but it got to the point where there are 2 people on Instagram, in particular I follow, Shannon Jackson and Glenn Murphy. Shannon Jackson has a lot of good video, like very funny videos about driving anxiety. And Glenn Murphy is probably one of the most transparent men that I've seen online that explain the different panic attack experience he had for about 10 years. I'm like, you know, I went through a good year and a half of intense stuff, but 10 years I couldn't imagine. But on the same night, they both went live and they were sharing different things where that moment of breakthrough. And, so, you know, I was like, that night, I was like, you know what? Tomorrow's my day. This was a few years ago. I was like, tomorrow's my day. So I'm going to, whatever is going to induce the old past, like fears, I'm going to face it. And I started talking back to my anxiety and all of the mental threats that was saying, oh, you're going to pass out, you're going to fail. I was like, do it. do it today. You know, today's the day. If I need you to carry out everything you've been saying to me. But guess what? If you don't, your credibility is gone. And guess what we do to the volume?
Yes,
exactly. you cannot speak. You know, I had to go Mbaku on it. It's like, no, you don't get to talk to me like that anymore. Because all you in the heart of it, and this is where I kind of had to shift again with my thoughts towards anxiety, is I had to stop making it my enemy. Right? It's an oversensitive, hyperactive, protective mechanism that thinks it's keeping me safe. You know, so now how do I sit down with it and say, hey, you know what? Everything is actually okay. Thank you for the alert. False alarm. You can go back to the, you know, the cubby. And when I do actually need you, yeah, please come out. But right now, everything's okay. And give that part of me the compassion needed so that it can go off to the side, or it's like a cloud that's passing, you know, in the sky. Like, I acknowledge you. I'm not, there's a cloud. What am I going to do? No, okay, I see you. Yeah, no, not rain today. Go ahead. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Now, it took time. Again, all the multifaceted tools and things I learned in therapy and the books and the online communities and the trial and error and the exposure therapies and all that stuff, like collectively, progressively over time, kind of helped me get back to where I am right now. But it took time. But the day I said enough is enough was kind of that was my one like turning point where I was like, whatever you're gonna do, come do it. But you don't get free space in my head anymore to, you know, make these exaggerated threats about things that could happen that never materialize.
Yeah.
Say it today, do it today, or you're done. And that was it.
Nice.
You acknowledge
it. I don't recommend that approach. Again, whatever works for you, whatever you and your therapist come up with in terms of a plan. But that's that kind of that warrior fighter part of me that just says, all right, you know, I've done the work to be able to stand up to you today, and today's the day. So let's do it. Let's get it on. You know, now I was ready to lose because there were other times I tried to go out and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this exposure. And my body was like, you better go home, buddy. Not today. You already got it.
That's right. Well, you have to be at the ready state, right? Like what you were talking about. You have to be calm enough, right? So that you're not actually re-traumatizing yourself.
Yes. And there were a couple times I was like, I'm sorry. I'm going now.
My bad. Okay. Wait.
I wasn't ready. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So it's been one heck of a journey. And again, I have appreciation for each stage. And I noticed the more I began to like share, I was encountering people who were quietly encountering and having the same type stuff. You know, my manager at the time, when I had the panic attack, he was like, oh yeah, like, I know what you're going through. Hey, take all the time you need. And, you know, just kind of give me an update every now and then if you need, you know, additional, you know, resources and help to get some of your, you know, your work done. And that was a blessing because some places they're like, hey, man, you're not producing.
Get out of here.
You know, but I was met with empathy and compassion. And I'm still in touch with that manager every now and then. I just say, man, I always appreciate, you know, everything, the compassion you had and helping me get through that very difficult time. So, and that's kind of not even kind of, it's what you need, the type of people that you need around you, especially during your recovery time. And really it's a new discovery of who you really are coming into your new true identity. You know, part of the recovery is learning how to let go and accept. And I didn't want to do that in the beginning. It's like I had a way in my head of how I thought it was supposed to look like.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit of scare, like letting go of who you were and who you thought you were, who you built yourself up in your mind, can be scary because you don't know what's coming next.
Right. And in addition to that, there was a grieving period.
Oh, for sure.
Of course.
You know, and but again, I never anticipated having to encounter any of that stuff. I'm like, wow, why am I feeling sad? It's like, yeah, like that part of you that you knew, say goodbye. You thank that part of you for getting you to where you are.
That part, yes.
Gratitude piece, but now you go into the uncharted territory. But when you have a guide like a therapist and someone who can walk you through that, you may feel lonely, but you're not alone.
Exactly.
That's the key difference.
I love that.
So that's what made a difference in my journey. And the thing was, like, my therapist there was a point where the first one was like, well, she's like, look, I'm happy with everything that I've seen, and we can kind of conclude. And I'm like, no, we cannot conclude. I'm like, can we do like a monthly maintenance check-in type thing? So I'm like, but there was a part eventually where you do move on and you kind of go back to your life. I'm still in touch with them, but you do need to kind of see where you are.
You got to see, you got to see what it's like riding the bike without the training wheels on.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You got to build the confidence that you can be okay. And then, you can go in for another one or a different approach if needed. Other things come up in your life.
Yes.
We also want to normalize that, like, you didn't fail if you go back to therapy. Like, you didn't break yourself, right? Things happen, life events happen, new triggers come up. Sometimes you need more maintenance.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
All that is normal and okay. And
it's
healthy.
not a checklist. It's not a checklist. Like, oh, I went to therapy, I'm good. No, I got one oil change. Okay, well, 5,000 miles or 3 months, we'll see you again.
Exactly.
It's like you said, there's different seasons too. Yeah. So different things can come up, different seasons.
Yeah. So it's I'm very thankful. And then just being able to meet folks like yourself along the way, along the journey, people who are either have made a career and are professional and licensed, and others who are like myself who are advocates. It's amazing the stories that you hear, and to be able to connect with like-minded people. Like, it's almost like, wow, like if I didn't go through these things, like I never would have met all these fantastic folks.
And know that there's a community out there that you even though like those times where you were lonely, you really weren't alone. There are actually billions of people on the planet that struggle with mental health disorders. Right?
It's
anxiety
that way,
is one of the most popular ones. Popular, bad word, but like it's very, very common.
Yes, very common. So, but like one of the kind of the concluding parts of the book talk about was divided into 3 sections. Right, there's awareness. We kind of talked about today. Having a journal, writing down. You basically become a student of yourself. Right, what am I experiencing? What am I feeling? Writing all that stuff out, right? And then being physically examined. Okay, what's going on with this blood work? How does your cholesterol? All that stuff, everything, it all ties in, right? Next chapter is equipping. Like, how do I find a therapist? What are certain resources that are out there? Like, one of the ones I like is Therapy Den, right? You put in kind of, you can filter. Obviously, it has to be in your state, right? But you filter according to your values and the specialties and your conditions that you may be dealing with or that you desire, and it'll filter out down to a nice number of folks to pick from, right? Like, what are things that are important to you? Maybe you want, like, my first therapist was a Christian, that was important to me the first time, so that kind of filtered down and eliminated, because there's a lot to pick from, right? Your employee resource groups at some jobs actually have things already set up for you.
Employee assistance programs.
Programs. That made it. I found my first therapist in a matter of 1 day.
Oh, wow.
I didn't have to do. I had a pretty specific list of things that I wanted, so I think it came down to 3, and I knew right away. I was like, okay, I want this one here. Now, even though I picked it out, I didn't go until my crisis period happened, like 6 months later, but the fact that I knew that I could rely on that, I went right back to it and went through the same process and was able to go that time. So, then we talked about the mind and body connection, the polyvagal stuff, right? 3rd chapter, execution, right? You need a map, you need a GPS. What is your map? You need the right mindset and action plan, right? In there. And then your GPS, goals, progression, and self-identity. We kind of talked about all that stuff as well. But those are some of the things that, I laid out in the book, and there's a bunch of different charts and things that you can actually download from my website that helps you to kind of put together your own toolkit. Like I kind of lay in some of the things that work for me, but you can certainly go in and make a copy for yourself and modify. And you need some type of way to track what you're doing. Like even things that, your therapist may give you homework or certain things to try. You're going to say how well you did if you don't have a way to, that off.
I love that. Yeah.
I love it. I know. We're like, yes, this is why we need you, right? We need people like you, people advocating for mental health recovery and therapy. Because I think hearing it from survivors is so much different than hearing it from the therapists themselves.
Yeah. And I have so much empathy now. Like when I see people, sometimes there are folks online who are may reach out in the DMs. Oh my gosh, I'm going through such and such. What did you do? Like I can share a bunch of things that I did. Now I always start with a disclaimer: not a doctor, not licensed, not a therapist. So again, you have to decide what's best for you as you partner with these licensed professionals.
Yeah.
I kind of repetitively say that throughout the book because, like, again, I'm not a prescription. This is my own unique story that shows you how I got from A to B.
Yeah.
Right. But your journey may be completely, unique and different. Maybe like I've had friends who did find out there was something wrong with their thyroid, and I had a lot to do with the things that they were experiencing. Right. But you won't know until you go and have the test run and form those relationships and partnerships and figure out what is unique and what works best for you.
Yeah.
So you need a framework. I certainly didn't have that in the beginning. And I'm like, again, what would I tell, that person laying in a hospital bed? How would I tell them to get started or where to go first? And what resources would I give them? Right. The one thing that I found at rock bottom, and I talked about this on another podcast, like, what is your superpower, like in the darkness at your lowest moment? Like, what did I discover about myself when everything was stripped away? Like the one thing that is inherently in me, that is my gift to the world, is hope. I didn't realize it was there, until it's funny. My therapist had me write, said, what are the negative things you're experiencing right now? Write that on the one side of the whiteboard and, name the positive things. I had probably almost a dozen negative things I wrote down, but on the positive side, the only thing I had written there was hope. And I was like, when I finished writing it, I could not think of anything else. But I was like, that's who I am. That's my real identity. That's what I hitched my wagon to. And that's my gift to the world.
Which is great, because that is the thing that, when we think about other mental health disorders like depression, right? Hope is the thing we're always trying to instill.
Yeah.
Right. That today isn't going to be how the rest of your life will be.
Right. Right. And you need that message, because I certainly, there were weeks and months I did not feel that way until I locked into the core of who I really was. So.
Hope. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. You want to wrap us up a bit, Dr. Joharchi?
I barely have to. That was beautiful. That was a beautiful summary. I loved hearing the different parts of the book again. I can't wait to hear about how we get the book, because I tried over the weekend. I love it so much.
Leaving Jupiter, navigating. Let me see. What was the better part?
Navigating your anxiety recovery.
Beautiful. That is so perfect.
Yeah. And my website is www.beyond-anxiety.com, where you can purchase your own copy. They are released now, so it's no more pre-order. We are live, and the first set of the books went out last week. So.
Nice.
I will be in the second set. I can't wait to share it with my partner, and I can't wait to share it with my friends, clients. But yeah, back besides the book, you shared so much about, my favorite part was the toolkit. I wrote so many things down, but there's so much more. You talked about tracking, self-compassion, journaling, therapy. You talked about water, hydration. You talked about sleep. So you talked about like the whole comprehensive toolkit and how that varies for each person, right? And I love that. And let's see, there's so much about your transparency with your journey that we got a chance to hear about. But it just left me wanting to read your book. So I just can't wait to see more. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you told us where you can get your book on your website. Where can people reach out to you? How can they contact you? What social media platforms are you on? What's your handle?
Yes, I am on TikTok and IG, and my handle name is beyond.anxiety_. And yeah, I did have to take a break this week. Yeah, I'm probably gonna maybe start up back again next week. I just needed some time away.
Pouring back into yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
You're still modeling. Exactly.
Yeah. You can end up scrolling or here's one thing that I kind of notice, right? Like when you talk about anxiety, a lot of times you have to get into like the symptoms and stuff, right? I notice if I do that for a very long time, it kind of gets me a little
anxious.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? Let's back up a little bit for a little while. Or you see other people talking about, what are 3 things you can do? Or what are 3 things you experience when you have anxiety? I'm like, when you scroll through enough of those, it's like, yeah, I need time out.
Here's the thing for myself, right? I'm on TikTok is my favorite social media platform right now. But I don't follow a lot of mental health stuff. I have a few therapists that I follow, just a few, but I use it for fun. I use it for my escape, right? It's where I go away from because of that, right? I need a break from it because what I do all day is related to mental health in some way, shape, or fashion. So when I need to take a break from it and go to social media, what I can't do is like only be looking at, other therapists, only be looking at people who are telling their stories and some,
It's become overwhelming because it's one after the other, right? It's one story after the other. So that was the other reason why I got into probably about spring of last year. I started doing astrophotography.
Oh,
so I started like a different channel there. And like even today I was looking at the sun and some of the sunspots on there, taking pictures of that, even for a few minutes. But it's just like road biking and cycling. When I'm like the first time I saw like Jupiter with just my eye and my telescope, I was like, oh my God, there's Jupiter, there's the bands, there's the little red dot, and Saturn with the rings. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm actually looking at a planet. And while you're looking and searching for different things, like there's that thing again where I don't have a care in the world. And one other person, I can't remember their name, but they had said something like, don't just do the things that you're good at. Right? Do what you love. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it creates that feeling of joy, where you start to meet other people who are also doing the same thing. Like we call ourselves the astro nerds. Now these folks have spent like thousands of more dollars. Like I got kind of the bare minimum, but there's a lot of things that I've learned from them. And now I want to go out and see if I can try it myself. Yeah. Then you take pictures and you're sharing, and like, it's just a lot of fun. So it's one of those things that is a part of my toolkit as well, where if I need to get away, I'm going to go look at some planets.
Yeah, I love that.
That's so cool.
That. Yes. So this has been just a really great honoring episode for me. I'm just really excited that you were here. To all of our listeners, you can reach out to us. We're on Instagram at Breaking the Couch. You can visit our website, breakingthecouch.com. You can still fill out the survey. If there's a few topics you want us to still cover. We have just a few left for this season. And again, this is our farewell season for Breaking the Couch as it is and stands today. We will put links to Leaving Jupiter in the show notes and make sure that you have all the contact information to reach Mr. Fennell. So until next time.
If you are looking for a therapist for yourself or your child, you can visit our websites, playfullypsych.com or softheartpsychology.com.
We appreciate you joining us this week and can't wait till there's another opportunity to jump on the couch with you next week.